Conspiracy theories, eh? Wait till you get a load of this. Hello, and welcome to Crack Sisters Conspiracies. We're a podcast that covers conspiracy theories, mysteries, and all over spooky shit. My name is Cassandra.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are said sisters.
You were doing so well.
We were so close to making it through.
You said one word and I already saw the corner of your mouth.
I don't know what it is, but I know something is going to be coming at me to derail the intro. So I just kind of accept it.
Good choice.
Anyway, good to see you. Just saw you yesterday. I spent all weekend with you.
You did.
This was supposed to have been recorded at the lake, which in hindsight, I don't know realistically how that would have worked out.
No, how or when, there really wasn't time.
But you came prepared at least.
I
brought
did.
my notes. My notes traveled all the way across the state. So
there you go.
It's not for lack of trying, but
still sunburnt. It hurt.
Yeah, I totally had the sunburn fever last night
Mm-hmm.
and I was exhausted. I fell asleep so early on the couch.
I know. While driving home from the airport, I'm like, I am falling asleep. So I took like a 20-minute nap and then I unpacked everything. I cleaned both the trucks. I rearranged the garage. I did all the shit and I'm like, I'm ready to die. So then I just fell asleep.
Yeah. Like what time? I think I got home about 3:45 and we left the cabin at 8 something.
Yeah.
And so it was some combination of driving, flying, what have you. So there was a lot of driving and everything for everyone this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to see Oakland for the first time. That's an interesting place. Been there, done that. No, thank you.
I mean, the airport's nice.
The airport's nice, but everything else is questionable at best.
Well, yeah, I could have told you that.
It was exactly what I thought it would be. But
yeah, that was fun. He was like riding his morally superior high horse because he's like, oh, I'm the only one that didn't get sunburnt. But then he got fucking destroyed by mosquitoes. I'm like, that's what you get, you little bitch.
Yeah, that was his affliction over the weekend then. Thinking that he is, untouchable, but neener.
Yeah.
Do you remember what my topic was going to be for today?
I do. It's Helen Keller.
Yes. Not just Helen Keller, but the theories surrounding whether she is a real person or is legitimate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes. This is actually a suggestion from my other half. I had been complaining about not knowing what to do. And so he was like, I got an idea for you. Have you seen the TikToks going around? And I'm like, no. So Helen Keller, you know who she is, right?
Yes. I heard she flew a plane once. Do you cover that?
It is mentioned, briefly touched upon. I don't go into the story of Helen Keller because we've all been there. We all learned about her. At least I thought. Like, you didn't learn about her in school? You didn't have to watch The Miracle Worker? Okay. I asked my child, I'm like, hey, do you know?
I don't even know what she looks like.
You should Google a picture.
Why'd you have to learn about her?
I've never. Real quick. Hold on.
I only know her from the 303 song and if you make like a deaf and blind joke.
So she was both deaf and blind.
Yeah.
With the help of her miracle worker, Anne Sullivan, she overcame her disabilities and was able to effectively communicate with people. It's a touching story of perseverance when everything else in the world is against you. And so it's
damn.
Yeah. Did you say damn?
I said scam.
Damn. Well, and there are some people, primarily it seems to be Gen Z, who's like, that bitch ain't real, or like, that did not happen.
Well, Gen Z is after millennials, right? The younger
Correct.
One. Well, is she dead?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I think they think if they never met someone that they're not real.
That they don't exist.
They don't exist and they never have.
I mean, there are so many historical things that have happened that you can be like, well, we didn't live through them, but we knew that they happened.
You would think.
But
maybe not in their eyes. I don't know.
We have learned through the many episodes of this podcast that what would be common sense amongst most people. There's a small subset of people, which is larger than it should be, that typically disagree with traditional schools of thought.
Exactly.
So yeah, we're going to explore the theory that suggests Helen Keller might have been a fraud if she was even a real person. So a little history lesson on the who, what, where, why, when of Helen Keller. She was born on June 27th, 1880. So the 1800s.
I did not know that.
In Tuscumbia, Alabama. Oh. And she resided on a family homestead previously built by her grandparents. It was called Ivy Green because, you know, back in the day, if you had land, it had a name to it.
That's a cute name.
It is a cute name. It's two colors. That's interesting. Ivy.
Oh, yeah, huh?
Yeah. Or ivy is great. Yeah. So anyway, she was one of 5 children, and 2 of which were half siblings from her father's first marriage. When she was just a year and a half old, she contracted an unknown illness described by doctors as an acute congestion of the stomach and the brain. Medical guess in today's day and age what it might be. I'm asking you as a former medical professional.
Encephalitis.
Meningitis.
Oh, one of the itises.
Yeah, so that's what current day doctors suspect it would have been based on.
Okay, so she wasn't born with that. Interesting. Okay.
No, she was born hearing and seeing and all the things normally developmental up until that point where she got sick. And then the illness ended up leaving her both deaf and blind. I assumed, I think like a lot of people did, that she was born that way, which also I think helps perpetuate the Gen Z thought of,
well, I never understood how you could be born blind and deaf and do anything in this world because you don't have any, how would you, like, what?
Exactly.
There's no really explanation of it.
And like realistically, how can you be born blind and deaf and not just be thrown out with the wash water at that point? Like, I feel like, especially in the old days, like if there was anything wrong, that
if you're not gonna contribute to this farm, we're just gonna get rid of you.
Yeah, take them out to pasture. But yeah, so it is interesting that it's something that happened to her at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Like at a year and a half. So kids can communicate pretty well. I'm fairly certain that Grayson was babbling away. I know she was walking. She was doing lots of things. And between sight, sound, and all of that, you've developed communication like with your child and the people around you. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind that she's not a potato starting from nothing.
Okay. She's like a spuddling.
Yes. The family cook had a daughter named Martha Washington, not the same Martha Washington that was married.
Like, I know that name. Okay.
Yes. I actually portrayed Mrs. Martha Washington in like 2nd grade for an oral presentation that I had to do in history.
Was that George Washington's wife?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know why I knew the name. I just knew.
Yeah. But it is not the same woman.
Oh, okay.
She was 2 years older than Helen was, and she was able to understand Helen via hand signs that they kind of had been using in the house at that time. So she kind of came into the picture at a little while after she had been deaf and blind. Apparently, Keller had developed like 60 different signs that she was able to use to communicate by the age of 7 with her family. And she was also able to like distinguish the different people in her household by their footsteps and the vibration and all of this. So even in infancy, it's very common to use different sign language and stuff. So it's possible.
But normally the parents teach the child sign language, not the child's teaching herself.
And so whether it was something that was established when she was younger and still like communicating as an infant that the family developed versus something after the fact, because if she can't hear or see or talk, how are they gonna know?
Well, she could probably still talk.
Maybe. I don't
know. Not like how you and I talk, but I'm sure you could make sounds.
Yeah, so regardless, they had a system where she was able to kind of get her point across. And so this cook's daughter was able to communicate with her as well. So she had someone to kind of keep as a companion.
Okay.
Helen's mother was determined to get help for her child and sought out the help of someone else who was able to provide her guidance with regard to how to like work with her daughter. So she's like, hey, do you know anyone who knows how to work with deaf-blind people
Okay.
or either one. And so she eventually got bounced around from like, oh, seek out this person. They might know a little bit about this and that. She kind of puzzled her way around until she connected with a woman named Anne Sullivan, who I mentioned is ultimately her miracle worker. Anne Sullivan is actually a former student of the Perkins Institute for the Blind, and she was visually impaired herself. And so they're like, oh, well, she's blind, you're blind, maybe you can help.
I forgot you could still hear me.
Sorry, Evan came in. I didn't even know he was home.
Oh, that's okay.
He was undressing and making all of the noise.
Oh. Well, real quick, while we have this interruption. So one of my presents for my birthday that mom sent me was from Johnny. And it took me a second to realize what it was. But once I processed it, so I don't know if you remember, in the, it wasn't the MLM episode. I don't remember what episode it was, but we were making fun of someone and you're like, oh, well, Mercury's in retrograde.
Oh,
and I said, the Pop-Tarts in the toaster or whatever. And apparently it's like they're his favorite phrase. So he just sent me 2 boxes of Pop-Tarts and mom just wrote the catchphrase on it. And I laughed so hard. And I think at one point, once I figure out this fucking Cricut machine, I'm going to make merch, like just little stickers. And that is going to be one of our stickers that we will get. And it's all because of Johnny.
I like that. Thank you. That was a great idea and great gift idea.
Yeah. You may continue now.
All right, back to the blind people. So Helen Keller has now been hooked up with Anne Sullivan, who herself is blind. This bitch has like gone to school and stuff for it. So she has tools and knows how to communicate, at least from a visually impaired, point of view. So things, like Braille, like those are tools that she's able to kind of help utilize in different ways. She began to teach Helen to communicate primarily by spelling words into her hand and then associating a meaning with it. So like WATER, run water over her hand. You do that kind of over and over.
Okay.
And the whole science behind it, I don't understand. Again, because this is a question, like, how do you teach someone these things?
Yeah.
And so
how would she know what W was or what any letters are?
There has to
only
have been
1.5.
Yeah. So this is something I still don't understand and why I can see where people are coming from when they're like, what the fuck?
Okay.
But like a lot of this stuff is Helen Keller's own accounting because she was able to communicate and talk about it a little bit later. But like, bitch has written books and stuff. So this is like her accounting of everything that's happened. She was communicating by spelling out letters, introducing objects, and eventually, apparently, she had a breakthrough. And it was much easier ride. The communication floodgates had been opened, and she had unlocked the secret to Helen Keller and how to like get her to learn things.
Okay.
And because of that, she ended up going on to receive like a formal education. She attended the Perkins Institute for the Blind in 1888 and then moved on with Anne Sullivan. So she was also like her companion. She was everything, like her governess. She took care of her. Essentially, her mom's like, here you go. This is your problem now. But they went on to the William Wade House and finishing school. So she learned how to be like a lady and do all those things. And in 1894, they moved to New York and attended the Wright Humason School for the Deaf. So she got the, blind education and then the deaf education and kind of put everything together. And she bounced around to a couple of other different schools as well. Like just anytime there was an area of opportunity for someone to teach her something in a way that it stuck, they kind of followed that path.
Well, yeah.
And she ended up graduating ultimately with like a bachelor's degree from Radcliffe College of Harvard University.
I knew Harvard was, somehow associated with her.
So she managed to be as relatively normal as she could, surprisingly, with all her different ways of communicating and learning.
Yeah.
Keller ultimately learned to speak, so she couldn't really like converse like you and I could, like that she would make sounds and stuff, but she got to a point where it was more like a formal like conversation. Okay. And she was super driven to learn how to communicate with people in the world. And so she spent much of her life giving speeches and lectures, which I so would want to see one. just to
That's what I was
experience
gonna
it
say.
because I have in my head what it might look like.
And it is comical.
And like I feel like I know it was done with Marlee Matlin on Family Guy. She was a deaf actress,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I feel like there was probably some other like Helen Keller, like Family Guy joke in there that is definitely in line with how I feel. Like I'm gonna burn in hell for the thoughts that I have.
Yes.
But yeah, she would go and preach to people and have her speeches.
Okay.
And she learned to hear people's speech using the Tadoma method. I guess there's different ways to kind of interpret the sounds and stuff that you're hearing, but the Tadoma method specifically uses fingers to feel lips and the throat of the speaker. So like you can feel the vibration, you can feel the way that the mouth is moving. I hate everything about the thought of that. Both
like if I just want to ask you a question, you're gonna like come.
You need to get molested in
my face.
Yeah, and then just because she's able to provide feedback, who knows if you'll be able to understand what the hell she's telling you.
And this episode is in no way a slight to anyone who is deaf or blind.
Oh yeah, we are not
Helen Keller specifically.
Yes, we are not ableist at all.
I took ASL, thank you.
Yeah.
I did in Spanish, but I've only got to use it once. And then the person's like, you sign? And then they signed 500 words a minute. And I went, I don't know what you're saying anymore.
That's like saying you know how to speak Spanish when really you only know how to ask for the check, the bathroom, and the library.
I know enough to get through a conversation, but it was this person, they saw that and they're like, oh, now because they're used to just texting or doing very minimum. So they saw that I could sign. So then they were like, the floodgates are open. And I'm like, no, close them. I don't know.
See, and that's my fear. Like we're going through Duolingo to try to learn enough conversational Japan to get us around next year, or Japanese to get us around next year.
Yeah.
But I'm like, if I demonstrate enough competence that they're like, oh, great, blah, 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 and then I'm just going to be standing there looking dumb.
I don't think anyone is going to think that you are a natural Japanese speaker.
No.
Based on the couple of phrases you say. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Probably not. I don't anticipate that actually happening, but my anxiety is telling me that that's something that could happen. So I will have Google Translate up for every conversation. And I think a lot of people speak English. But anywho, I don't have Google Translate for how to speak Helen Keller.
Yes.
There might be tools like that are available.
There wouldn't have been then. Well, no, right now they actually, I don't know what manufacturer it was, but they are, whomever they is, have made a product of basically Google glasses, but I don't think it's Google, where a deaf person can wear them. And as I'm speaking, it gives subtitles in real time so they can read what they're saying and then like converse back with them.
I need that for life, period. Not to diminish those that are truly hearing impaired.
I know, I can't hear shit.
I'm like, I'm fairly certain there's like an auditory processing delay going on, which I mentioned to you the other day, which makes so much sense. But yeah, life would be so much easier. It cut down on the what's, hus, that's so great because I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I had no idea. That's very cool. Back to Helen Keller, who did not have that available to her. You know, she really had to struggle. Yeah. And she also became proficient at using Braille and finger spelling, the whole Anne Sullivan thing, to communicate with other people too.
Okay.
Keller was a massive advocate for people with disabilities, as one might suspect. Yeah. And she actually helped to found the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Like she was one of the founding members of that. She was very involved in the Socialist political party and had a lot of radical political thoughts and was able to communicate with those.
Yeah, that's great.
And she also wrote and published 12 books in her time. So that just seems incomprehensible to me that you...
What are you doing with your life? If Helen Keller can publish 12 books, you are a failure.
Right? I can't even fucking publish TikToks. Like
you cannot. I just checked before we got on this.
And I thought about doing it in the airport, but then...
That sounds controversial.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Oh, there was this woman in the Oakland airport that I wanted to kill. Like I had a very specific spot because it was in line with where I needed to stand when it was my time to get in boarding line. I was not moving and I had a real chair. But anyway, this lady comes and sits right in the middle of the whole section, the terminal or whatever.
Okay.
phone on full blast, scrolling through her TikToks. And it was like some vulgar stuff. It sounded like she was watching porn at some point. Like there was a lot of just, oh my God, pearl clutching noises. And there were kids around. And this lady didn't give a fuck. Like everyone was like giving her dirty looks and just, she didn't care. She did not care. I had to put in my noise dampening earbuds because I was going to cry.
If you were in a communal space, just fucking put headphones in or put your shit on low. Everyone has headphones nowadays. Just don't be that guy.
Don't be inconsiderate. But
yeah,
people at the airport do not give a fuck about anyone or anything.
Airport is a whole separate beast. There's
really
no real rules, society, anything.
I was shocked and awed at what I witnessed this weekend. So Helen Keller, because she accomplished so much, she was actually also awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Lyndon B. Johnson. And she was also elected to the National Women's Hall of Fame at the World's Fair. Like people were super impressed with her, which I can understand. And Keller ended up dying in her sleep on June 1st, 1968 at the age of 87.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So she lived longer than I thought she did, but she was also born way before I thought she was. So I have a whole skewed perspective. But
yeah, that's true.
Let's fast forward to recent times. The internet. This is where people started cropping up, calling into question the accuracy and legitimacy of Keller's accomplishments. And to be fair to those in current times that are questioning it, even back in her time, when she was 11, the principal of the American Asylum in Hartford, Connecticut, wrote an article for the American Annals of the Deaf entitled, "Is Helen Keller a Fraud?"
Oh, wow.
People were questioning it back in her day.
Oh, okay.
And one of the reference points in the article was the controversy at the time surrounding Helen Keller's ability to have written a story called The Frost King. So there were quite a few similarities between what she wrote and what was an already published story called Frost Fairies. And it was suggested that Keller had knowingly plagiarized that work because it was so coincidental. And also, how could she do that herself?
Yeah.
And the question of whether it was intentional plagiarism wasn't confirmed, but it was known that a caretaker of Keller's had read her The Frost Fairies a couple of years beforehand.
Okay.
And that likely influenced what she wrote. She has apparently or had like a pretty impressive memory and stuff. So they think it's very likely that she heard something when she was 8 and like maybe that's what she used as inspiration. So there were questions from the get-go.
Well, a lot of times there's like this preconceived notion that if you have some sort of disability, no matter what it may be, that you are automatically an upstanding citizen. Just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't also be a piece of shit.
That is 100%
rights, equal
true.
fights, bitch. So she very well could have scamming everyone. Just because you have disabilities doesn't mean you're like a saint.
Okay, so I'm going to sound like a really atrocious person right now, but there was this woman, well, she's a woman now. There was this girl at my high school, and she had one of those motorized wheelchairs.
Oh, yeah.
And you might have seen her like riding around See Me. She had some leg development issues. She obviously had a rough go. I referred to her as sit and spin. And
you're right.
I would never.
You are a trash person.
I was never mean to her, but she was a huge bitch to me. And like, she was one of those people that if she were coming down the road, it doesn't matter if she was in the opposite lane, like you're talking like walk lanes in the school, you had to get out of her way or she would just run right into you. Like she would just swerve right into you on purpose. She would make comments about it. So, you know, she did it on purpose. She was up there mentally.
Yeah.
She was just very entitled because she was in her wheelchair. She could do whatever she wanted. And she was very vocal about it. I'm like, that does not excuse being a dick.
Right? Yeah. I agree.
And I didn't feel bad because I'm treating you like any other person in this.
Exactly.
Situation.
It would be ableist of us to treat you
differently just
because if you're a dick, you're going to be called a dick.
I'm not going to excuse your bad behavior. Another common misconception back in the day, I think I mentioned it earlier, any disability, whether it was blindness, deafness, a growing issue, whatever, it was also assumed that you weren't mentally developed as well.
Yeah, that
figure
is
if
true.
something was deficient, you're mentally deficient too, which we know as I just mentioned, that's
Yeah.
not always the case. And it's not right to assume that.
Yeah.
But that's part of the framework that helps support the idea that maybe she is a fraud and the whole
Yeah,
thing is
exactly.
an act. So following that line of thinking, how is it possible that a deaf, blind person can learn and grow and accomplish all that she did in life?
Mhm.
So some people believe that Helen Keller simply didn't exist. She is just a made up character. And like I said, while others believe she was real, but maybe she wasn't blind or deaf, or maybe she perpetuated accomplishing things that she really didn't. It was just like talking shit. So it was really prominent a few years ago on TikTok and Twitter. And it seems to kind of come full circle every couple of years where like someone knew, well, what the fuck? There was this whole Twitter thread about this guy who had nieces and nephews in high school. And there was this whole conversation about Helen Keller, like, no, bitch, she ain't real. It was very funny to read. And he was just baffled. But like I said, I asked my child, who is 8, and she's like, I don't know who that is. So
Yeah.
The thought of someone being able to exist and live a successful, fulfilling life while visually and auditorily impaired just is not impossible, apparently.
Mm.
It does seem a little suspicious. Like I said, we called into question a couple of things, like how the hell did she pilot a plane?
Yes, that's what I would like to know.
That was an accomplishment that, was noted. And so to answer that, she didn't fly the plane alone, which is a big duh.
Okay, yeah.
She had a pilot on board who was giving instructions that were communicated to her through her companion, her translator. So, like, it was the worst game of telephone I can imagine.
Yeah.
Tell her to pull the joystick
Did he have to be that pilot? Like, did he sign up for this?
What, that might have been a death wish. I bet that was probably punishment for him.
Yeah, you fucked up. Here you go.
I mean, that would take some big balls to volunteer to do that. But that was the explanation on how she piloted a plane. It's not what we envision. It was something that she had accessibility like built into it.
Did anyone ever test how disintegrated her eyesight was and her hearing? Like, because you can be deaf but still hear something. You can be blind but still see something. It's just a legal definition.
Correct. And I get the impression that she wasn't fully all I see is black blind.
Okay, yeah.
I hear nothing deaf. Like there was likely some variation of both sight and auditory processing. It's just not the same as you or I, experience. So I'm sure that is a big component to it. And people are just assuming it is the worst case scenario where lights are off, nothing's going on. And that's likely what it was. We had more there. How was she able to write so many books? The answer, she had a Braille typewriter and she learned how to read and communicate through Braille. And she had help editing and polishing and putting things together. The theme is while she did a lot of this on her own, she didn't do it all by herself.
Yeah.
Like she was enabled and given the tools to be successful in that, but it's not as shocking really when you think about the logistics of how it could be. The other question, like how was she able to learn to speak and read and write and communicate? So circling back, she wasn't born deaf and blind. She likely still had some sense of hearing, some sense of sight. So she's not starting from the absolute bottom. Would have taken a long time and a lot of effort to learn, but that's not to say that it couldn't be done. So that's just us being closed-minded about the possibilities that are out there. So to completely dismiss her based on her conditions is ableist and it's not socially acceptable, morally acceptable. Don't be a shitty person. But if that person deserves it, you can be.
By all means.
But there are a lot of deaf-blind. There's a term for that. There's deaf-blind folk that have had successful lives. I forgot what her name is, but there's like a lawyer who's deaf-blind who has been very successful in her field. Like it's not, especially in today's day and age where we have tools and technology. There's a lot more possibility there. Whether I think she was a fraud, no. I think she did the things that she is being celebrated for. I just don't think they were to the same degree as how they were portrayed. That's kind of where I'm at. I know she was a real person, but
I'll go with that. She was a real person. I think she defrauded certain aspects, whether it was how blind, deaf she was, or how disadvantaged she was. I don't know. I think maybe she had some sort of skew in how others perceived her versus how maybe she really was.
I can see that. I mean, that it's an angle that she would have worked. Yeah, she used it to her advantage. So really that in itself is impressive. She identified a way.
Yeah.
To capitalize
if she
on it.
was fucking fake, good to her. Like, that's awesome that you could fool people into that. That's a success in and of itself,
and she did do a lot of good for people, like with the ACLU and stuff. So not to say that she didn't do good things, but yeah, that doesn't mean you're a good person.
Yeah, or that she was, had evil motives. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying maybe she
wasn't fully truthful.
Yeah.
Or she embellished a little bit more.
Yeah, embellished is good. And used it to her advantage.
Yeah. So I would be curious to see who the next person that, the younger generations doesn't think is real. Like, what about Hitler? Like, do they think Hitler's not real?
Probably not yet, but I'm sure
that might come back around.
Yeah, that was a big thing. The Nazi deniers. That's a whole.
Oh yeah, there's like
Holocaust
deniers and all.
Or Holocaust deniers, yeah.
But yeah, that small subset of people that makes me concerned for society as a whole.
Yeah. People are shit.
Have you given thought to what your next topic is?
Let's see. So this must pull up. Okay, this is one Marissa suggested.
Okay.
I don't remember the context. I know she heard it from a different podcast, but she said it was interesting and she wanted to hear our view. So I'm going to cover the Frog Boys of South Korea.
What?
And I can't give you anything else because I don't remember what it was. I didn't write any notes.
Frog Boys of South Korea. Is it boys that existed solely on frogs, and how was that? Is it boys that thought they were frogs?
I know it was boys, and I know they lived in South Korea. That's all I remember.
I'm just speculating on what it could possibly be, and I'm probably not even close. Who knows? It's going to be something weird, I'm sure. So
I'm sure.
Okay. Well, cool. Thank you, Marissa, for the suggestion. We'll explore it when we record next.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have any other suggestions, we encourage you to reach out to us on our social media platforms. You can send us a good old email at cracktsistersconspiracy@gmail.com. Conspiracies@gmail.com. Why do you look like that?
It just sounded really weird.
cracktsistersconspiracies@gmail.com.
But you said at cracktsistersconspiracies@gmail.com, and that's what threw me off.
Maybe because I was thinking of the next thing, which is our Instagram. But that
makes sense. It just sounded not right, but they know.
Anyway, you can find us on Instagram also. Send us a DM, leave us a comment, check out our little snippets here and there. We have a Facebook and an X. We have a very poorly cultivated TikTok that you have done your part in sending me the clips as your editor.
I have.
And I have just shit the bed at every turn. So I say this a lot. I'll try to be better.
That's all I can ask for.
Like I tell my daughter, don't be sorry, just be better.
Okay.
That's a common phrase in our house. Otherwise, if you don't want to rely on my unreliability, you can always subscribe to our Patreon and just get access to the full recording. So instead of a 30-second clip, you could get the full 30 minutes to an hour and all the things that happen in between, good, bad, and ugly. But yeah, subscribe, give us your money, and we'll make it worth your while. There's lots of finger guns. This just happened in the last one, and I panicked in one of the other episodes. And then, the white power freeze, and
yeah, you've been a little glitchy lately.
It's okay. I am short circuiting at every turn, but what have you. That's not going to change. Anywho, stay cracked, y'all,
and have a great day.